I know, that was my other thought.
Good evening. It's 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda is a presentation by the Chamber President Greg Dane and Mr. Gary O'Neill.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Gary, you want to come on up? I have to thank Gary first and foremost. He did the lion's share of the heavy lifting here on most of this. And I hope we can talk informally here amongst ourselves. We got an email from Ted a few weeks ago saying that the proposed budget may be reduced to $10,000. We just wanted to have a discussion with you all tonight to say, based on what you have in front of you, here's the budget that was received this year from you all. Our memberships now stand at approximately 31. I think that's the right number. Sponsorships, you see that number totaling $25,750. We do 3 major events, 3 chamber mixers, which has been very important this year. We've done more this year than ever before. Unpaid lunches, you see Kim's wages there for a total of $23,303.16. My number one concern is this. I'm not a resident of Bel Aire. I chose to join this chamber 3 years ago because Gary and Kim welcomed me in. I live as the crow flies straight down Woodlawn, probably 4 miles from here. And I have enjoyed getting involved with the community because I wanted to be part of a smaller community and a smaller footprint in a chamber. I guess I would like to know from you all, if I could hear from each one of you individually, where you have stood in the past in terms of support for the chamber, because I believe Gary can testify to the fact that it is the city that wanted a chamber to begin with. If the proposed budget for next year, and I will be rolling off as president, I'll simply be a board member. If the proposed budget for next year is going to be cut to $10,000, it's my opinion that it'll severely hamstring the efforts of the chamber, because I'm going to be very candid with you. We kind of feel like we're operating on an island unto ourselves because of, I personally, I can only speak for me, okay? I don't see, when I look around, look at the board, I don't see a majority of you involved with us with chamber events or attending for that matter. And I don't know what the disconnect is. Not pointing fingers. I know people have responsibilities and they have families, and I get all that. And this is something I thought about on the way over here. This is not something to get hot about. It's not something to lose sleep about. It's simply trying to find a happy medium of what y'all's expectations of a chamber is, because we feel like we're the doorway to people coming into this community. Aside from going straight to Ted and pulling a permit and building something without getting involved. And I will say, again, looking at the majority here, Councilman Dean, Mayor, Ted, I see Greg at some events. Outside of that, we don't honestly know what the support looks like from your point of view. And until we hear that, we don't really know where to take this, because I'll be candid with you. If the decision is made to cut us again and cut it to $10,000, I know Ted's looked at a lot of other municipalities and trying to come up with a number. And I've shared this with the board in the past. If at the end of the day you feel like cutting us to $10,000 is where you need to be from a city budget point of view, I get it. But just know from me, as the president for the remainder of the year, I'm going to recommend to the board that we disband and hand it back to you, because we're doing all the work anyway. And if that's the case, you can have your own event department and try to run the event yourselves. And I'm not saying that as a threat. I'm just saying it as a matter of fact. We are giving of our time voluntarily because we chose to do that, because we want to give back to the community. I'll be very candid with you and say, before I got Ted's email, I was going to push for $20,000 for next year because I think we can do better with events. And if there's not a stranglehold on your budget, I don't think $5,000 or $10,000 is going to break this community with the type of growth you have coming in. We struggle on a monthly basis to have a great number of individuals show for those meetings. And sometimes you guys some of you are able to attend, but again, looking around the room, I have to assume if you're not getting involved with us, then you have no interest in the chamber, or you have other obligations that keep you from being involved in the chamber. So, and I want Gary to share his thoughts and views too, because this is simply a discussion to understand what y'all are thinking. When I come in here quarterly, and when Gary's come in here in the past, or Aaron, y'all are gracious enough to give us a few minutes to share where we are and where we're taking the chamber. But I think it's fair to ask the question, where are you today? What are your thoughts? If you are anti-chamber or on the fence about chamber, there's no better forum to share that here and now with us, because I'm going to stop and just pose it back to you guys to say, do you have a preconceived notion of what we should look like? And if you feel like in your heart of hearts, this needs to be cut, then I can only do what I can do as president to recommend to the board that we disband the chamber. And I'll leave it there. Gary, you want to say a few words?
I do. I've got several little history. I think the chamber was formed here in Bel Aire, I believe it was 2009. And I was still working, managing Central Plains Steel at that time. And when I retired 14 years ago, I thought, well, I'll join the chamber and become involved with it. And in the bylaws, I looked at the charter of the chamber. There's not one person that chartered and started the chamber here in 2009 that's still involved at all. No, nobody. So I went from, I became a chamber member, and Tristan Terhune was the representative for the chamber, did all of our clerical things for us to help the chamber. 4 years ago, we lost Tristan, and we were told we had to hire a part-time executive director for the chamber. So I was president at that time. I went through 4 part-time executive directors before I was able to get Kim Madison to go to work for us. And I only got her to go to work for us because they shut down the hotel she ran over at 53rd and I-135 there, which is a real moneymaker. And she was looking for something to do, so I talked her into coming to work for the chamber. We have struggled to find someone that can put in the hours and that's required to do that. And Kim's doing a great job, don't get me wrong. But when I put the budget together, she isn't putting in as many hours as what I had budgeted when I put the budget together for the funding. And Ty initially, and this was before, he got $20,000 for the chamber, and we were at $20,000 level for a couple of years. 2 years ago, we had 45 members. We'd grown the chamber from like 22 to 45 members. And I was thinking we're going to go up to maybe 50 the next year. So we asked that the budget be cut from $20,000 received back to 15 because we were making progress. Then it stayed at 15 for the last couple of years. And then the membership went back down again. And we have really struggled to get it back up. We are currently at 31 members. We didn't ask for the chamber to be here. We're just trying to keep it going. It was started by somebody else. We had nothing to do with it. But then I've got to remind you, this is a bedroom community. And I know we went out, I asked Ted to put together, because Ty had done this some years ago, what other cities in the area are paying for their chambers. Goddard pays their chamber $10,000, but look what Goddard's got over there in the way of businesses. Mulvane pays $40,000 to their chamber. Look at the businesses they've got in Mulvane. Cheney pays $100. They've got a lot of businesses in Mulvane. Derby doesn't pay any to their chamber, but look how many businesses are in Derby. Mays pays their chamber $10,000, and Mays has got a lot of businesses. You look at how Mays is growing. Hayesville pays their chamber $5,000. Keachai pays nothing. Park City pays nothing. Valley Center pays $5,200. Andover pays $10,000. All those cities have somewhat thriving businesses and commercial entities in there besides Bel Aire. We're a bedroom community. We've always been a bedroom community, and we're struggling trying to get where we have rooftops now, and we're trying to get more commercial property this way. But I would like to point out, Park City pays nothing to their chamber. Park City wants money from the chamber. I attend Park City's meetings at every opportunity. Let me give you a little update here. The community updates at the Park City meeting, I think I handed this out to you. They have a pride committee that reports at every chamber meeting made up of citizens of Park City. They have a convention and tourism board that reports at every meeting. They have a community relations board that reports at every chamber meeting. They have the Park City Arena that reports at every chamber meeting. They have the Park City businesses in general that report, a committee that reports. They self-fund themselves. But when you look at the businesses along I-135, down 77th, the next street up, 53rd Broadway, they got lots of businesses. Bel Aire is a bedroom community, and we're trying to change that. We've been trying to change that since it was founded in 1980. There used to be here in Bel Aire a community events committee. And all of the parades that we used to have here was put on by the citizens in the citizens event committee, community event committee. We don't have that anymore. So the chamber was put, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, in charge of putting on the city events because we don't have an event committee to do it. And that's why Ty provided us with more funding so we could do the events and pay for those because nobody else in the city would do it anymore. Now, so we now hearing that we're going to go from 15,000 possibly in funding down, people want to go to 10. We spent almost over $12,000 on the 3 city events last year. And our membership only brings in $3,600. And I raised the membership dues 3 years ago because they were too low. And I raised them up, and we're still trying to get more money. Sponsorships, we get $7,100 in sponsorships last year. I put this unaudited financial together here. I wanted to make it short and plain. But we took in, including what the city paid us last year, $25,000, and we spent over $22,000 on the events, the chamber mixers, the unpaid lunches where people say they're coming and they don't come, and we buy lunches for them. Then one employee's wage and mileage. That's $22,000. So if you take $10,000 away, I don't know how we're going to do the events. We'll have to cut back on the things we bring in to do the events. And I'm of the opinion that every business, anyone that does business with the city of Bel Aire, as a requirement should be that they belong to the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce. If they're going to come in here and take money from the city, I think you ought to become a member of the chamber. And we've got a lot of businesses that do not belong to the Bel Aire Chamber. We have fewer businesses now that belong to the Bel Aire Chamber than we did 3 or 4 years ago that do business in Bel Aire. So we need your partnership to help get not only new businesses in here, but the people that do business with us, they need to join the chamber.
I just want to thank you, Gary. I just want to add one thing that y'all might be aware of. Our most active member to date this year that joined is Credit Union of America. The incoming president next year will be Luis Rodriguez. The reason why I asked him not to come tonight is he lives in Goddard and he would have to burn 2 or 3 hours just to come to this. They talk about the Bel Aire Chamber to every business person that comes in the door to Credit Union of America at 37th and North Woodlawn. I don't know if y'all realize or not, but they do. He and Eric run that branch. And we awarded them a member of the quarter for first quarter.
And we held the ribbon cutting ceremony, the grand opening for that facility when it came in. It was attended by all of the people from Credit Union America's corporate office. There was a lot of people there for that. And our chamber did that. It's nice.
So y'all please share.
So
Tell us what you think.
the ironic thing about Credit Union America is it's actually technically in the city of Wichita. It's not even Bel Aire. So it's cool that they're stepping up and helping us. One of the things I know that has been a theme over the years is that we would like to see the chamber be more on its own so that we wouldn't need to fund it. But I see, and I understand that that's not ever come to fruition yet. And so to Mr. O'Neill's point, we do need to grow the businesses in Bel Aire, particularly the retail businesses. And it's been an issue that he and I have worked on together, and we've just kind of not gotten the traction on that we want. I'm still thinking we're going to have something here the next couple of weeks that'll help us with that, but I haven't seen it yet, so I won't talk about that too much. So, but that has been the desire and the focus, and but I won't try to tell you why a $10,000 figure came out, because I know that was some other folks' idea, so I'll let them speak for themselves. But anyway. But I'm a big supporter of the chamber.
Sure.
I've been in most of the meetings I can be.
Yeah.
So
I will tell you, I've been on the council here almost 8 years now. And every year it has been my stance that the chamber should become self-sufficient. And we gave the money we gave as a bootstrap process, not as a perpetuity type thing. And your membership's going down. So you ought to be asking your memberships why they don't think the chamber's a good deal. And we traded the sponsorship for events for money is what we did. And if the only good we're getting out of the chamber is the sponsorship of events, then we ought to be looking at a different sponsor. It's my opinion.
I will share with you, and I appreciate your comments. We have scratched our heads as to why we can't draw more members. We have done door to door. We talk to every person we can. I will echo Gary's sentiments in that we believe that it should not be an option, but a requirement for everyone that pulls a permit and decides to do business here. They should be a chamber member. It's not rocket science to pull that off, we don't think. That would be a big help from the city's point of view. And listen, what chamber would not want to be self-sufficient? But again, this is a bedroom community. I have tried this year to do some different things as president. You always try to think of different opportunities. We do think the mixers are getting some additional folks out of the community. We just had a financial planner join this last meeting. Are they going to come in waves in this size community? No. And again, at the end of the day, y'all feel like it should be freestanding and self-sufficient. We have no response to that other than we're doing all we know to do. And if it needs to come back to the city and fall under Nick's jurisdiction to run himself with a couple of part-timers, that's y'all's call. But if that's going to end up being the number, I'm not offended. I'm not mad. I'm not upset. It's just we can only do what we can do. And I would have to say again, I would have to go back and say, it'd be my recommendation that we disband. I plan on being around next year. I'll be very candid with you. Had Luis not stepped up, I was on the fence about that as to which way I would go. But Tyler has an open door policy with us. He's also a member, the mayor, Ted. That's all I can speak to. So unless I hear and poll each individual member here tonight, I don't know what to take back to the board in terms of your response. So
I want to make one more comment about what you said. you suggest that we require every business that does business in Bel Aire to be a member of the chamber. I don't think we could legally do that. Our council's not here to answer that question, but that sounds to me like something we could not even ask.
If you can't do it legally, you can't do it legally. But, you know, if the state of Kansas, I think if you purchase a new home, we purchase an older home, but if you purchase a new home in Kansas, isn't there some type of tax added?
Let me
Okay.
interject there
Yeah.
for a second. Is Maria online? Okay, Maria, are you online? Your chance.
I don't
Maria,
necessarily say I'm
can you
saying-
answer
Maybe I
us?
said require. Maybe I should have said we need to ask them very strongly that they consider joining.
Yeah.
If it's
Well,
not legal.
and I put that back to the chamber, though. If you should know who the new businesses are, and you should be the guys going out there asking them to be part of the chamber. And you should be able to explain to them why that's a good deal for them, not just because it exists.
I agree, we do that, but do you know when you walk in the city hall here to pull a permit or to pay a bill, there's no mention of the chamber in there at all about us?
Yeah, I can believe that, because I think that would give the impression we're trying to tell them they need to, and I don't think that's something we should be doing.
So you're not pro-chamber for this community?
To be honest, I have not been pro-chamber because I haven't seen the benefit. And the only benefit I've seen over the last few years is the events that you guys have done for us.
Have you attended the events?
I don't even attend the events anymore.
Okay.
I
Well,
have attended some of them, but I don't anymore.
If you come to the one in October, we don't draw in just hundreds, we draw in thousands of visitors.
I know there's a lot of people there and there's a parking problem. That's part of why I don't go, because I can't walk 3 blocks to get there.
Okay. Did your city attorney come online?
I haven't heard her come on yet. I just sent her a text. Hopefully she'll get online.
I'll
So,
share a few words while I wait
So-
for her. So first, thanks, Greg. Thanks, Gary, for coming here. And I do know that it's very largely volunteer led, and I really do appreciate the time and effort you put into that, because I know that can be thankless at times. But you know, when we had this discussion about what to put in the budget, really, in my recollection, the idea was we ought to be working you guys towards the goal of becoming self-sustainable. And so we had kind of been taking that stepped approach, right? It was 20 for 2 years, it was 15 for 2 years, and it just kind of felt like a natural progression that, hey, we need to keep signaling our plan is for you guys to keep growing. So we're going to kind of ratchet down our support. I wouldn't be disagreeable of keeping the support at what it was last year, but I would like to see a clear goal of, hey, like right now it's 60% Bel Aire, 40% members and sponsors. I'd like to see that flip like next year, like if we were to support it. And the way I think that ought to be done is you guys come up with a plan. Like, what's your plan for how the chamber ought to do that? I don't think that should be coming from us. I think that's why you guys are in business, and that's why you guys are members and your sponsors. You guys should come together as a board and decide that. So I'm not going to dictate that. But I will say that I do believe in the chamber. I've been involved with it pretty regularly for the last 6-7 years. I do appreciate what you guys do partnering with our staff. I know it's a partnership. I know you guys don't do it all and our staff doesn't do it all, but I appreciate your guys' partnership on helping host our community events, because those are important events. And I think a lot of folks in our community and in and around our community do come in and attend those. And it's just kind of one of those things where you guys are not at critical mass. You need to be about twice as many members and sponsorships as you are. And for whatever reason, that hasn't happened. I can appreciate Gary's comment about 45 back in 2022, because I remember that. And I remember everybody going, this is a world record, let's go to 50. And that hasn't happened. I do have one question.
Yeah.
So I have sent kind of some ideas and some thoughts, and I've even thrown out a few company names of folks that I know are doing business for the city. Just as suggestions, just as, hey, get a hold of these folks. They might be interested. I'm not making that call. I'm not going to ask them to be a member, but I am passing on. I'm folks that I know that might be in support of, that are doing work for the city, might be a good person to visit with. Have you had any success, and don't name names, but have you had any success when you have somebody say, hey, I have a referral? It doesn't have to be me. I mean, it could be anybody on this bench or otherwise, or Ted. Hey, have you had any success with any of those types of folks where you've been given sort of a pretty hard or strong referral Because I mean, I think that's the best way to grow it, is it to be a word of mouth, it to be like kind of organic like that. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not a chamber expert, so
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah. So to answer that, myself, Gary, and Aaron, all three of us have made repeated calls as current presidents to the businesses been referred. We're waiting on Crosswind Construction, one of your referrals too, to possibly host a meeting later in the year. So there's that. I personally, I don't know the answer to this question, but I've never been given a list of businesses that have pulled permits from the city to establish business here so that we can follow up. That's never been, put in my lap. That would be a big help. If we receive that on a monthly basis, we've got fresh faces to follow up on that may not even know about the chamber. That's why I say this is a symbiotic relationship here. It's not a push-pull, it's working together. So if we got a list like that to help us grow the membership, that would be awesome. I do think it's not much to ask to have information about the chamber in your city hall when people come in to look at what does the city offer. The alternative to this, y'all, is something that I've thought about just on my own. You could, if you chose to do this, turn this into a networking chamber where all that we do on a monthly basis is meet and network to try to grow the city. And we put the events back to you guys. And then Kim doesn't need the job. She can find a part-time job somewhere else. They're blessed with a good income. This is something that she chooses to do. But I think at the end of the day, it's like, if we're not hearing enough feedback from y'all as to, like Tyler says, giving us names and referrals, we always follow up on it. I would feel terrible if he gave me a name. I'm like, no, I'm not going to talk to him about that. We try to bring in quality speakers throughout the course of the year. Some of those have led to one-off conversations with Ted, I know, about possible pickleball opportunities. Had you been at that meeting, I think you would have learned a lot about opportunities in that vein. We've got one of the state senators coming in to speak in October. We try to come up with really good speakers to come in to draw membership. But pulling members or pulling businesses from you guys on a monthly basis that's bringing business here, if we knew that, I wouldn't be having to reach out, for possible recommendations. So
Have you asked for that list?
I have not personally asked for that list.
If you don't ask, nobody's going to think to give it to you.
We got a list from Ted a year or two ago, last year, of everyone that has done business with Bel Aire. Not that it just currently came in, but everybody that has done business. So
We're talking
have
about a
gotten
lot of
list.
different lists right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
People who pulled permits, a bigger list than
Right.
vendors. And and Greg, I'll get you whatever list you need. I don't know quite about the permit pulled list, but I know we worked in the past with vendors that we've done business with. We also, I believe, and I was looking up, we have just business license lists as well that I think we've talked about, but
Something you might consider that I don't know the answer to. Being a bedroom community, post-COVID community, how many remote workers do we have that are running remote businesses out of those homes? I'm not a Bel Aire resident, so I don't know if they have to pay any type of tax
They do
or
not.
fee to be a home-based business here.
It depends,
No,
on,
there's none.
depends on the
There's-
kind of
Yeah,
business.
I've always wondered how many home-based businesses could we reach here if we knew that information to pull people out of their homes to get involved. That's a subset of businesses that we've never tapped into, but we don't know the answer to
And
that.
most of those, we don't know who they are either, unless they're doing some kind of walk-in business like cutting hair or something. I don't think we know who they are.
Yeah, well, they don't have to have a permit for most of those
Gotcha.
type of businesses. There are a few types like the haircut thing that you would need a permit, but most of those type of businesses don't. I did get an answer from Maria. Apparently her microphone is not working. So the answer is chambers are voluntary organizations. We have no legal authority to mandate businesses to join the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce. So that was just the word she said. So so that answers that question, but at least we know. So
Three of you I hadn't heard from yet. So
yeah, well,
curious.
haven't had a
Yeah, go
chance
on.
to. So give them a chance.
Yeah.
Emily?
I appreciate the candid conversation. My Wednesdays have changed. I went fairly regularly a few years ago. I will tell you just for some background, and I do appreciate the candid conversation. So I came on city council a few months after the initial conversation was had about funding the chamber. I'll just be frank with you. I probably would have agreed with my predecessor, who was the one no vote against doing it in the first place. I view the chamber as, from a city standpoint, if we can find a mutually beneficial relationship where you guys can run events and that helps your members get out in the community and advertise, that's great. And we provide the community room for networking, then I think that's fine. In terms of the civic duty, the 5 city council members up here who come to 3 meetings a month and have a lot of preparation time, we make $15,000 in total combined for the year. So I think it's most people up here are doing their civic duty. I don't necessarily agree that you have a civic duty. And in terms of the comment of businesses taking money from the city, they pay a lot in taxes, almost double what a resident does. So I think businesses add value. They're not taking anything from the city.
I don't think I made that comment that they were taking business from the city.
What's that?
I don't think I commented that they were taking.
I don't remember if it's you or Gary. So they're taking money. The question around, could we require them to come? But even if I wouldn't have voted for it, I could appreciate the other side that Gary was really committed and gung-ho, and it was a way to get it off the ground with some seed money until you guys could be self-sufficient. I will just say, as a taxpayer and a resident, I would have thought half a decade was a good run to get it off the ground. And I don't think there's any shame in that. In fact, listening to you guys talk, I don't wonder, like you mentioned Goddard and Park City, if this isn't a chicken and egg issue. Before we have the businesses to sustain it, are we asking you to do the impossible to be self-sufficient? So that was where I was at. And I didn't want to jerk the rug out from under you guys. I wanted to see us steady, hold to that obligation that this was temporary, but see it decline each year. And I kind of liked your idea about, maybe you guys should kind of give that obligation in the contract for running the events back to the city. Nick is here as a dedicated person. Rec staff has to always be involved regardless of who's volunteering because it's on our property. So I kind of like your idea. And I can appreciate you guys' frustration where it's like, you guys are asking us to do the impossible and you're defunding us or lowering our funding again. So that's where I'm coming from. I liked it if it could be mutually beneficial and we could get you guys on your feet. But I think you might be right. This halfway thing may not be it. It may be time to, pull the plug. We'll take the events back. And if it's valuable to, provide a space for mixers, then I think we should do that.
Well, I appreciate your comments. And I'll reiterate what I started with. It's a great opportunity for us to just talk because I'm not going to lose sleep over this. Y'all are not going to lose sleep over this. It's if I'd have known about Bel Aire when my wife and I chased our kids here, we probably would have made a home here. We like Wichita, but I like the smaller communities. So it is always a struggle to find, where is your sweet spot? Where do you make a difference? And we're trying. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. David?
I appreciate all you're doing, Greg, and I also appreciate what Gary did emphasizing the Bel Aire area Chamber of Commerce, because that's, like you said, a bedroom community. That's the only way you can make this work. I think all the council members I'm aligned with that we don't want to carry this. We want to taper it off, and that's where the 10,000 came from, just some tapering down. If we need to pay your expenses for the events, maybe there's a negotiation there, and certainly we should help you with any list or anything we can do to advertise it, but we can't carry it, and we shouldn't force people to enter it either. It's voluntary. Even if it was legal, we shouldn't do it. So that's where I stand. But thanks for all you guys are doing.
Thank you.
I'll add on why I'm thinking about it. So the area comment, I agree. And I think one of the comments I've shared with you was the idea of considering, is there a way to make this a 254 chamber and expand upon that area, right? There's lots of small communities that are along that highway that we all know. and some of them have quite a few businesses and some of them don't. So I'm guessing they've had chambers go through this same issue, right? They just can't self-sustain. And so, I mean, that's another thing to investigate is, does it make sense to reach out to some of those other smaller chambers and have that discussion of, you know, are you guys interested in potentially partnering up and making it a bigger impact and moving the needle more and getting the critical mass that you need? I mean, I sit here and think the amount of businesses that we have developing in Sunflower Park and the energy that that has. I mean, I'm thinking of like 6 names that I know aren't members, that aren't sponsors, and I'm kind of shocked. I mean, there is business in Bel Aire. It's just a matter of getting them to understand that the chamber's here and what value that provides them, right? The home business, as you mentioned, whether a person's working from home remote or a home business, probably isn't going to see a lot of value in the chamber. But maybe some businesses that need to recruit for their workforce, or like there's different angles to why you might get involved in the chamber for networking. And I think that maybe there's a few other things you could give a try. I don't want to give up on you, but I do agree that we should keep tapering. And so I think that has to become a reality of, okay, in 3 years, that's probably your timeline of we're completely on our own or we're not. Like we're just not a thing. I don't know. I'm just speaking from my heart. I know it means a lot to you. I know you said you're not going to lose sleep, but I know you've put a lot of effort into this, and I know you volunteered your time, and I know that it would impact you. I mean, it would. I mean, and Gary, who's went through it, and some folks that have volunteered. So I don't want to pull the plug. I just want to say that I think that there's a little bit of runway left for you guys to figure it out. But I do think you have to come up with a strategic plan and how you get there. And I was kind of shocked to hear we don't advertise. I think that's a low hanging fruit. Yeah, we should be advertising. That should be in the packet of everybody that moves into town. Like, that's crazy. I don't know why that's not happening now. And I'm not calling anybody specifically out, but that just should be in there. Should we require it? Absolutely not. That should not be a requirement, but it should be advertised. It should be easy to find. We as a city support this. What do you mean we don't? We as a city support this. We're members. We're funding it. It's impacting our businesses and our citizens with our events. Yes, we support this. So that's the last I'll say on it, Tom. I'll let you. I know I kind of cut in there, but he.
Okay.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
fine.
254.
Yeah, it is Tom's turn. So,
We're good. All right. Thank you. Appreciate everything you're doing. I like the chamber. I like what you're standing for, and I hope sooner than later, I see as Wichita basically grows through, I'm going to say it that way, grows through the suburbs, and they're just going to expand out, and businesses will be coming in, and it's good that we'll be ready for that situation. And I think we're just right on that edge where it will get better. We've been struggling with several things, COVID and everything else that really put a monkey wrench in a lot of activities. I like the sponsorships. I think that's great. Having somebody to work with within the business side of things in relation with the city as well. I like all of that. As far as the budget being ratcheted down, I'm okay with where it is with a 15. I understand where they're trying to do the weaning thing as well. And if it takes a little bit more time, I understand. And I do think just from this discussion, I think is great, because then it helps me understand a little bit more of where there may be opportunities for improvement on both sides. So I think for me, I'm a supporter, and I'd like to think that I can be in the long term as well. So that's where I'm at.
I'm grateful for everyone responding tonight, because I've never known when I come in and present, the first thing I talked about earlier in the year was this being a partnership. It's strange that organizations like Chamber of Commerce, being a member of a board, some folks, and y'all know this, just want to put $25 down for a membership to say, this is on my resume. I'm a member of the Bel Aire Chamber and I'm president of this, but they never take part in anything. We'll never be able to control that subset of population that just wants to join and never show, right? But having a consistent membership, Gary, I think, I'm not going to try to speak for Gary, but I think you would agree that we have always had a great communication dialogue back and forth between y'all and the chamber. Whatever we need to do, we will do. if it means putting back the activities to the city, put that under Nick's jurisdiction, taking a load off us. Kim is, I think I can speak for Kim. She shared with us, she can find another part-time job. She just likes to stay busy in the community. So we're going to work with you. We're not here I'm not going to go back and deep six the chamber based on the conversation tonight. No, please hear me when I say that. But we're going to have to shake things up somehow, some way. So with that, I think you've got some other folks you need to hear from.
I've got one more comment.
Yes, sir.
Sitting here. The city-sponsored events was 12,000, and I think maybe we could bump the 10 we're talking about to 12 to cover those events if the other members were up to that. And I also kind of wondered when I read through this if maybe we should be cutting one of those events. I don't know which one's the least well attended. It seems to me like Christmas isn't the biggest event. Maybe that should be cut. I don't.
You again have not attended, right?
I have come to some of these events, not last year.
Let me just share with you, give you a little historical perspective. I don't know the gentleman's name that plays Santa, but when we opened doors at 5:30 last December, he would not take a break upon my suggestion. We had families flowing in here for 2 solid hours. With regard to the other events, which one will you cut? I don't know which one to tell you. We put out 20,000 Easter eggs for Easter egg hunt for kids in this community, and they wiped out 9 soccer fields in about an hour. So was it well attended? Gary is president of the local Bel Aire Lions Club.
It's just an idea. If
No,
they're
I
busy,
want
they're
to
busy.
give you some history since, again, you're not attending, so you know where you are.
And I've got no reason to attend most of those events because I have no little kids.
It's not
I
about
don't have
that.
grandkids.
I can't change your mind about the mindset of those kind of events. I'm just giving you some history. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask one more question?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so you had said sort of that this partial thing, if we bring you down, is not sustainable. One thing I thought of, especially hearing more about Kim's perspective and that sort of thing, do you feel if we took some of this back and you were able to cut Kim, that might be better? I mean, how much is?
I think cutting Kim would be a mistake
Okay.
based on what I've seen the last 3 years of what she does for us. She coordinates the lunches. That means she's running to get the food herself. She does a lot of things that we don't have time to as business owners. I'm self-employed, right? She's doing this part-time, and I know she has other agendas. I don't know the perfect answer there, but I say if you cut Kim, you kind of cut the lifeblood of the chamber right now. But again, if you did that, and I'm assuming tonight you're not making a final decision, right? We're just talking. Is that right?
Yeah.
So with that, if you punted that back to Nick and say, is this something you could take on as well? I know he's been communicating with me well the last couple of months about, hey, we'll make sure we get this in the newsletter about the upcoming meeting. So I know he's working on that initiative. In our initial discussions, again, kind of a knee-jerk reaction when I got that from Ted, and I shared with the board, hey, if this is what's going down based on the struggles we have anyway, maybe we need to give this back to the city.
Yeah.
And I think that's not, again, not a threat. It's just a possibility that exists. And would the chamber go away, again, turning it into a nice networking meeting that takes place once a month? If you join a BNI group, you're going to pay $1,000 a year to join. And if you don't show up for a regular meeting, you've got to find a substitute, right? They let you get by with not attending. I'm not a BNI. My wife was a former BNI president, president of one back in Virginia Beach before we moved here. But I don't know the perfect answer. We'll just have to roll with whatever you guys deem fit for us. And again, no hard feelings. I've heard more from y'all tonight than I've heard all year, which has been beneficial for me personally. So I'm really appreciative.
So Ted, what's your perspective? If we cut chamber funding and took the organization back ourselves, we could reach out to the chamber if it made sense for them to be in the community to volunteer, but providing space for them to network.
Frankly, knowing what I know about our budget, the 15,000 would be adequate to continue the relationship we have with them. One of my big things, and I talked to Gary about this a lot, is how do we get the younger generation involved in some of our volunteer organizations. And the upcoming president is a younger guy that I would like to see take the chamber forward and see what we can do. I think it's a informed discussion that we didn't have last workshop. We were mainly focused on ratcheting down the support, which I completely understand on that. But those are kind of my things that have changed once we had this discussion. I'm more than willing to do what we can as from the city staff to support these guys. And I think we have through some various channels, but we can be more open about it if we wish. Like you said, and been working with Nick. That's a newer position. I'm a little, Tristan was kind of the chem of the organization for many years. And what happens when the city's growing at the same time, we need every resource we can to work on city work. And sometimes that gets in the way. And that's kind of, I think, what my predecessor Ty saw. So this was the middle ground we saw. But those are my 2 cents in that we're trying to get this younger generation going on the volunteer side. So that's the only thing that changed since our last discussion.
Okay. Well, personally, I don't think that loading these events on our current staff is going to be a viable option. I don't see that happening. They do a lot to help, and that's always great, but there's a lot more involved in these events than that. And I think those events are important for the city as a quality of life issue. I do not see, I do not manage, obviously, the day-to-day of the staff at all, but I don't see that Nick would have the bandwidth or time to take over any of those events and manage those events.
It'd be difficult.
I'm sorry?
It would be difficult.
Yeah. So I don't see those as options, but I do think we need to have more discussion about these things. We spent already 45 minutes on this. So I appreciate the time and everybody's input and understanding where we are. Okay. So that's a very good thing to do. And, but I think we need to probably put closure to this for tonight, but this is not, we're done. We're just putting closure for the night, and then we'll pick it up and have some more discussions about this. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
I would like to thank the council and governing body for allowing us to come up here tonight and kind of tell you where we are and what help we need and how we got where we are. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
Right,
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I add one more thing? So with the list that you're talking about, I think one thing too to focus on is sponsorships, because if we're going to continue the events, the 2 or 3 events we have, the bonus value to the sponsors is the number of people that see their logo, that hear about them. I think it'd be important for the chamber to come up with that data. How many views on our social media, how many folks are attending those events. That data could be an important tool to help you sell sponsorships. Because I mean, I'm looking at the sponsorship number and that's twice as high as your membership paid. So if you can increase that, that's potentially a good business model for you to consider is focus on
So
sponsorships.
I think,
Just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
But a lot to work out there. So thanks.
they have an executive committee that needs to have those discussions, I think. So, but thank you.
All right, thank
All
you.
right. Next, we have Miss Rebecca Lewis from Burns McDonald's who speak to us about our sewer challenges.
Well, thank you again for being here. It's nice to see all of you again. We've been busy, so I'm going to just talk a little bit about where we're at and what we've been doing and just go from there. Hopefully this will. So the agenda that we'll talk about is first the monitoring, the wastewater monitoring that we did at the 2 lift stations. We'll also talk a little about the collection system. We have some odor and corrosion control issues that we have talked about before. We're going to talk about those a little bit more. And then what we see is next steps. So you guys have seen this slide before. This is the monitoring locations. We have the one at the lift station on 53rd Street North. It takes about 5 million gallons per day. And then the one down at Harding and 37th, and it's around 20 million, I'm sorry, 12 million. They had 20 million last month just because we had a little bit of infiltration from the rain events.
Those
So,
numbers are per month. They're not per day. You
Per
said
month.
per day. And I'm
yeah,
sure
did I
that's
say,
wrong.
I am sorry. You're right, per
Okay.
month.
Okay, that makes more
Good
sense.
catch. Yeah, you guys are listening. Good job. Okay, so here's the monthly averages of since through the end of June. We sample on a weekly basis, and I should point out that starting in July, CCUA has taken over the sampling events. They were already sampling at Park City. Felt like it would be a good representation if they did both cities. So we don't have any of those numbers, but we do have throughout June. Everything looks pretty good. We're still seeing some high numbers. You can see we've got some, I don't know if, oops. We've still got suspended solids, especially at the 53rd Street continues to be kind of high. We have some higher BODs. Again, we talked about this in the winter months. There's just not a lot of good BOD removal because you've got cold weather, and that's a biological activity, and those little bugs just don't like working when it's cold. So we did have some higher numbers in the winter, but we're seeing a lot of the numbers go down. Where our averages are comparing very well throughout. We've been doing this since the last half of 2023, and the averages look like they're just sitting right in there, all pretty good. The orange, why it's orange is that would be over those, if you see those numbers over there on the left side of the screen, these are the design numbers that CCUA has developed. So 239 milligrams per liter of BOD, the same for suspended solids, 36 milligrams liters for ammonia, and 8 milligrams for phosphorus. That's their design criteria that they're using to design the plant. And that's what they're assuming the domestic sewage level is at that level. So anything over that is what we're calling extra strength or high strength waste. So then one of the other things that happened these last few months is that all the wastewater meters have been installed at not only Bel Aire's lift stations, but Park City's. They've all been calibrated. And so we're actually measuring the flows from the lift stations now, rather than we had a wastewater meter up there at the air control site there on 53rd Street, but that was not consistent. We had a lot of issues with that metering. So now we're getting fairly consistent measurements. And again, as the mayor pointed out, these are million gallons per month. And we're seeing about of the percent flow of the CCUA plant flow, we're seeing an average of 44.8%. That's right in there. The original CCUA agreement was 46.3, I believe. So we're right there with that average flow with that we thought might be bits. But it's good that we're getting really good numbers now. So this is really a lot, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but if you recall, we decided in the cost of service agreement that we would allocate a charge per pound of BOD and TSS. Because we didn't have any history of charging that, we used the numbers that Wichita charges their industries for their extra strength fees. And that's 30 cents a pound for BOD and 25% per pound of TSS. That is not the charges Bel Aire will have to pay. What they'll do is we'll look at CCUA's operating budget, and then a percent of the loading allocations will be allocated to each municipality. This just kind of gives us some numbers and gives us a way to get there, and kind of gives us just a measuring stick. But you can see, really, I think the important thing is the total pounds. And so you can see on BOD since June, we've had 211,000 pounds of BOD, 256, and this is just at Harding, 256,000, almost 257,000 pounds of suspended solids. And then again over at 53rd is 108 and 108,000 for BOD and 180,000 of suspended solids. So I think those are the numbers you need to focus on. We are working, actually, we have a contract also with CCUA to look at how we're charging these things. So we're looking at ways to
Quick
do this.
question
So
here.
this is the next
I
contribution.
got a question here.
Yeah.
On these BOD charges and TSS charges, Is there a baseline that you subtract from the total before
Yes.
you come up with the charge?
Yes.
What is that baseline?
So the baseline is you take the milligrams per liter, subtract 239 for both, because remember that's the design
Right, right, yeah,
criteria for
Right.
the BOD, as well as the same way with suspended solids was 239. So if you look at that top row in January, the monthly average for Bel Aire was 189. So there was no charge because it was less than the 239.
Okay.
So you subtract that, then calculate your pounds based on the total monthly flow. So you don't subtract out any flow, you just subtract out from milligrams per liter.
But at the end of the year, you do a true up, and
Yes.
if the total is not in excess of the 239 milligrams per liter, then there would be no charge. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Correct.
But that depends on a total year calculation.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And again, Bel Aire has done a really good job sampling. We've got a lot of data. That's our quandary, because Park City has just started their sampling program this year and they've missed some sampling events. So we're still looking at their numbers. So this next slide, we only have June numbers. So it's just a point in time, but we do have those numbers. So again, what we're seeing and what kind of surprised all of us is at whether it's Bel Aire or Park City, the lift station concentrations are higher than what's coming into the influent. You would think, well, it's the same water, it's all should be calculated out. But lift stations are, they're known to be higher because you've got this kind of this square box. It's a wet well, and that's where you're collecting your sample. So there's not a lot of total flow through. There's not a lot of flow velocity. It's also a place that catches solids and grease rather than it flowing down a gravity sewer line. There's a little bit detention time, so your BODs especially have time to kind of cook. So those are all higher. As we looked at this more and more, we're not surprised, but Burns and Mac and then CCUA and the board is going to have to do a little bit more homework to figure out how we're going to do these allocations. But I will give you an example. If we just based on, well, here's Bel Aire's total pounds in June was 43,102. The total pounds going into CCUA was 88,000. That's that yellow goldenrod next to last column. There was 88,956. That shows that Bel Aire was contributing 48% of the BOD. But if you look at the lift station totals, we have Park Cities and Bel Aire's. That 433,000 was only 37% of the 117,000 of the lift station total. So the lift station total loading was higher than the CCUA. So we're looking at that. We're trying to look and see how we can do some better calculations, better modeling. People that are a lot better at math than I am are figuring this out, and we will be talking to that. And as we get to that, as CCUA board gets to the end of the year, we'll compile these numbers. We'll look at where the cost of service is. And again, remember that this is kind of a practice year for us, gathering the data. We'll still be going by the old contract for charges this year. No extra strength charges will be allocated, but we're looking at this because we do know the strength is an issue, and it's why our CCUA is having to expand the plant, but we want to make sure we're expanding it correctly and not having to deal with a lot of heavy loads that not the municipalities, but the dischargers that contribute to the municipalities can control at their point of discharge.
Rebecca, if you've been to many CCUA meetings and Tony presents the influent strength.
Yes.
Will we get to a day where we'll see where Park City versus Bel Aire on Tony's report? Because I think that's when I sit in that meeting, I think, oh, I wonder how much that's contributed to Bel Aire versus Park City.
Yes.
And that's what I think we're trying to calculate right now. So you guys are more informed of the total numbers.
That's correct. That's correct. That's what
Yeah,
we're
if I-
working towards.
I would just say, and there's probably an explanation, and I don't want to go through it right now, but if you presented this chart to that meeting right now, all you get is people trying to figure out why the chart is in error, because there are some issues there. But they're probably explainable, but I don't know what they are, and I don't want to spend time in this meeting trying to understand the math.
Sure. Well, I'd
Okay.
be happy to have a conversation with you offline then
Okay.
about that.
I just want to clarify, is the formula developed to that level, or are you saying we still have work to do to develop that formula?
Absolutely.
Please come to the mic, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're talking about here is the exaggeration that you see at the lift stations and the effect that has. And the reality check was that if you sum the loads, estimated the strengths from the lift stations, you'd have a higher concentration than you're actually seeing at CCUA. So that tells you do have that exaggeration. So kind of the calculation or the equation that's being developed is to figure out what the proportional difference is. We know what the flows are, so if we could figure out what the proportional differences are, then those can be applied to those flows
Right.
and give you that differential and allocate costs accordingly. So that's what we're working on now. And I think we'll have more data coming up soon. It's going to be data that CCUA has generated. So it's going to be good data that everybody should be confident in. And then we'll be able to start to see the trends that are going to look like what the year is going to demonstrate. So.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go to, so if there's no more questions, then please, even if there's something offline, Brian and I are available to answer those questions.
Yeah.
And Tony's very good about also responding to these things as well. So we'll just go on to the collection system activities. These are the sewer lines that serve Bel Aire. Again, you guys have seen this slide before. We just know that there's areas of corrosion on the sanitary sewer that runs along 53rd Street. We also have had odor complaints from residents who live on Lassay, as well as from in that 53rd Street area. So we know these problems are caused by the excess hydrogen sulfide that is in the sewer. It's basically, it sits in those wet wells. The sulfides start to gather because that's a perfect environment for sulfide bacteria to grow, and they're making those odors. Also, the sulfides actually combine with the water, make the water acidic, and that's what's causing the corrosion on the concrete. So we've kind of got two things going on there. But again, these guys have seen these numbers, and we're going to see some successes here, and they have been taking a lot of action. And one of the things that they have done is they've increased the amount of sewer line that they're cleaning. To date, they've cleaned 9,500 feet of sewer line. They've also televised, so they're looking for voids, they're looking for roots, they're looking for those type of things. They've televised 1,200 feet of that. And then we talked a little bit about that odolog that measures the hydrogen sulfide. They've put that at different sites throughout the collection system. And since we're talking about the sanitary sewer right now, they've used two sites. One is the Webb Road Force Main discharge site, and that's on Lachey. And then the Rock Road one, which is actually on 53rd, the Rock Road Force Main that comes from the lift station there over to 53rd Street. So again, these were presented last time, but we had just off-scale results on the hydrogen sulfides. We had a whole lot of sulfides at these discharge points. So we looked at those, and again, that's when they started their sewer cleaning. They've also done some other things in the manholes, and we're going to talk, are in the wet wells, and we're going to talk a little bit about those. But interestingly enough, they just did this one at Lachey, and it looks pretty good. You can see that don't pay attention too much to the purple and green. That's your temperatures and your humidity readings, I believe. But the blue line is your sulfide. So we only saw two little peaks in of sulfide readings, and they were one just barely was over 100 milligrams per liter, which was really great. They have been flushing out the wet well frequently. They have been cleaning the wet well basin. They still use the bioblocks and some other things to prevent as much sulfides as possible. But we're going to talk a little bit more about how we can address these sulfides because we think we're not there yet. But again, they've done a whole lot of things with the lift stations. Like I said, they've cleaned out the wet wells. These are, they're using a power washer, cleaning the dirt and grime, as well as knocking down the grease cap that kind of collects on top of the lift station wet well. They've taken a lot of odor measurements at the wet wells. And then they actually, throughout the year, they're getting very close to replacing one pump, right? And they've replaced another one. So they continue to look at these things, evaluate them, and they have been doing different things. Again, we talk about the bio blocks and the dish soap. They actually extended the vent pipes that are located at the wet wells. They've extended those so they're a little bit higher. They put caps over them, so it's dispersing the air a lot better, so it's not collecting right there in the fenced area of the wet well, and the odors are better that way. They've just done a lot of really great work out there. The web road, which we discussed the last time, was one of our issues. We knew that this lift station was over-designed at this point in time to receive future flows. When it was pumping through that force main, that measurement that we saw looks really good, but it's because they've done these things. They installed the water hydrant, they're flushing that wet well weekly, they're scheduling the cleanings. And then we're going to talk a little bit about proposed chemical treatment that we think will be successful. And again, this is the area this sewer line flows in the back of these homes. This is where they're getting a lot of the odor complaints, is that you can see every one of those little round places is a manhole, and that's where a lot of folks are smelling the odors. So we're seeing some small signs of corrosion there. We need to look at it further to see if that needs some replacement. But at this point in time, we're going to try to work through maybe a chemical addition and see if there's improvements, or at least not any more further degradation. So again, these are the odor log monitoring results that they did at both Rock Road and the 53rd Street. You can see the Rock Road did not look too bad. But the 53rd, that's receiving the water from that force main from the Rock Road station, was consistently over allowable thresholds. Again, this is the Webb Road one. It was a little bit better, but you can still see, it's a diurnal sulfide production. You can see that sulfide's coming up kind of early morning, middle of night type of thing, and it's because it sits in there, it's not going anywhere, and those odors like to start doing their thing then. So these are the things we have looked at. We've looked at aerators. They continue to have aerators at 3 of the lift stations. Again, we looked at what we call the bio blocks, and they're continuing to put those in at 3 of the lift stations. And I believe there's Rock Road, Harding, and 53rd Street.
We only have 2 bio blocks.
Okay, 2 bio blocks. Okay.
And we have 4 areas.
Okay. Okay. And they've also raised the vents, they've replaced the covers. They're looking at adding carbon filters at those. Again, we talked about the scheduled wet well cleaning. And then the chemical addition, which we estimate will cost around $75,000 a year. And so we're going to look at that and look at what we're planning on doing with that. Getting council input on this. So we're looking at, we reached out to USP Technologies to submit a proposal. They suggested that we use a chemical called sulfalox, which is a low hazard chemical. You don't have to have hazardous waste management or criteria. If it spills, you don't have to report it like, hazardous waste. So it's pretty good. And what they did, and if you can look at that, they took samples at all those locations. They measured the ORP. The more negative the number is, the more possibility of causing odor, sulfide, or corrosion. So they looked at those. They felt like the Harding station was not bad. So they don't suggest adding chemical there. What they looked at when they looked at these numbers, they recommend that chemical be added at the Webb Road station and the Rock Road station. So they are proposing a pilot because we want to see first if this is going to work. The pilot is almost $15,000. They'll install the dosing pumps. They'll do some monitoring, liquid and vapor phase sampling. They'll also they'll be available. There's a gentleman here locally that will be available for on-call technical support. And then at the end of this, they'll develop a report recommending if they've got the dosage correctly, or if this is just not working at all. They'll have numbers and be able to share that with us, with the city. So the thing is that costs a lot is the totes of sulfaloxone. It's $24.48 a gallon. There's 300 gallons in one tote. So that's what the cost is.
Question.
Yes.
I noticed the cost per tote goes down considerably if we order more totes. Are those something we can store so we can take advantage of the bulk pricing?
Yes, yeah, and that's what I reached out to Marty, and he thought that they'd have available storage.
There's no shelf life requirement on these.
No, they said well, you'll be using, I think you'll be using if you order the 13 totes, you'll probably use those in 6 to 8 months, and they're good for usually 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
So that is the cost difference there. Assuming the maximum dosage, if you just got 2 totes per order, it's going to be over $250,000 a year. But if you're using those, again, the maximum dosage would be, if you use the 13 totes, it's $112,000, almost $113,000. In my opinion, I don't think you'll ever use the maximum dosage. Just looking at Web Road, it's improving already with the activities they're doing. I think it'll be the minimum dosage. And so that could be, 56,000 a year, 56 and a half. And to be conservative, I estimate 75,000 a year. And that would be a conservative estimate. So I feel like that would do the job, reduce your odors, as well as not cause any more corrosion in the sanitary sewer lines. So speaking of the manhole rehabilitation project over there on 53rd Street, this is the significant corrosion that's in the sanitary sewer line between Prestwick and Oliver, right to that lift station on 53rd Street. We continue to see a lot of corrosion. However, we feel like if we did a replacement now without adding a chemical, without doing some type of treatment, we'd be back where we're at right now. So we recommend doing the treatment now and then looking at the manhole rehab project at a later point. Staff did seek engineering assistance, and they could do the manhole condition assessment, do some data review, prepare contract drawings and specifications for the city, provide an engineer's opinion of probable cost, and then do preliminary design submittal review and a final submittal. So that would be in the package, the scope that should the city decide to move forward on doing a manhole rehabilitation project. This would get you not to construction, this would just get you to design. So to end it, next steps, pretreatment program. We haven't done a lot these last few months on pretreatment. Again, these guys do more than one job. So seasonally, they're really busy with storm events, mowing, and those type of things, and just haven't been out to revisit some of the industries. We plan to start that up this fall. We'll follow up on the paperwork that's been submitted, as well as ask industries that haven't submitted any paperwork where they're at. Like I said, the collection has transferred to CCUA. We'll continue to monitor those results and develop a better numbers for the true up, and then continue. And what we recommend on the odor control corrosion is proceed with the pilot program. If it's successful, consider annual contract with USP Technologies, and then at a later date, evaluate the manhole assessment. So that is all I have. If there's any questions.
So you kind of answered it, but just to clarify, pretreatment, we've not done a lot going upstream on Fifth, Third Street, lift station to see what's going on with the users that are feeding that
That
particular lift
higher
station.
solids, not a lot. We have inspected a couple of facilities up there that we think may have contributed. They actually looking at their practices and
Mhm.
what they're doing. It looks like they shouldn't be contributing excess solids. We have not done any sampling there. We've just gone out and visited what they're doing to control their discharges.
Okay. So I don't want to be negative about any business, but my gut tells me there's probably one or two businesses that are contributing to this, but I don't know who those would be.
Right.
And I think if we can figure that out, that would probably be a big step towards helping reduce some of this. I get it that it's just never going to get rid of the H2S. That's just the nature of the beast. It produces H2S, right?
It does.
So I'm not against all those other things. I just think that I'd like to see us be a lot more robust about trying to figure out, making sure all of our users are actually putting the right things in the sewer and not putting things in there that shouldn't be, or maybe they need to have pre-treatment program. I mean, I know that businesses, I've audited businesses that spend $100,000 for pre-treatment stuff before they dump water to the sewer. They said the water they dump in the sewer is cleaner than what they get from the tap, but that's their opinion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I wouldn't take a drink of it. So.
right. So,
Yeah, no, you're right. That's the gist of it, and that would reduce your solids, possibly your BOD, but
Right.
by
Mhm.
visiting some of these facilities.
So anyway, it's just something that I think we really need to try to focus on. I appreciate this work, but that's something I think we need to make sure we get a little more robust about. So if we don't fix the upstream, we're never going to get, this is just never going to be never ending game. If we don't fix the upstream.
Right.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Dean.
Becky, along the same lines, I had the same kind of thought or question do you see this in other communities like ours? How would you compare our BOD and TSS and the problems? I know you mentioned that the wet wells can be an inherent problem just because of the flow slowing down and it's concentrated, but is this a regular problem that just at some point you start dealing with as a community, having to chemically dose, or is this kind of rare? Like, where would you put it as far as the strategy?
So, especially in Kansas that has these long, slow sewer lines, there's quite a few communities that do chemical treatment. And USP did send us their cities that they're using, and many cities around here do use a chemical treatment. As far as lift station numbers, again, just anecdotally, I remember when I worked for Wichita, we had some issues with several lift stations, especially lift stations that would be like downstream of heavy commercial areas, especially like restaurants and things like that. You typically have high BOD and suspended solids.
Which we don't have a lot of that.
No.
Restaurants and whatnot.
Yeah,
So,
commercial, or not commercial,
right.
institutions. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just so I understand, as that gets built out east, some of the issue is because there's just not enough flow. Is that right? Because things are staying
In the
there
lift
too long?
station itself, but you're right. The odors are caused from oversized wet wells, that were sized to accommodate the planned expansion.
So it might improve from one angle, but you're still going to have this issue as more things probably come into the system.
That's a good question. With more residential flow, you should have fewer solids and fewer BOD, because your residential, that's what wastewater plants are designed for. That's where that 239 comes from, is from residential. So if you have more residential development, it might lower. I shouldn't say should, it may. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing I think is the budget workshop, but I think I want to do about a 5-minute break before we start into that. If that's okay with everybody, we don't need to vote on it. This is the informal meeting, right?
That's right. Just do it. Take a break.
Okay, I think everybody's here, so I think we'll get the meeting back together and continue on with budget discussions. And I think Barry's going to help us with this, and so we'll turn it over to Barry.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Tonight is our third budget workshop. Previously, we went over all the data of evaluation that we received back in June. Our second workshop was all about the general fund and about the mill levy and taxes generated and all of our department spending for the general fund. So tonight, we're going to talk about sewer, water, solid waste, stormwater, all of our utility funds, streets, bond and interest, our debt service fund, equipment reserve, and CIP. CIP, it's an ever evolving thing. So if we don't cover 100% of it tonight, we can always touch back on it later. So we'll start with our utility funds. Just a quick slide. Where does the money come from? We are now our utility funds. These are all generated by user fees and user charges for water, sewer, storm, and solid waste, which is trash. So we'll start off with sewer since we just had that fantastic presentation. I learned a lot. That was great. I actually enjoyed hearing all that, so that's good. Just to go over some of the quick highlights on the revenue side, we just did a normal 3% increase based on our annual rate increase each year, that 3% per our resolution. And then we'll kind of run through the expenditures here. This is the only FTE that's proposed for the 2026 budget. There's one additional here. This new FTE will take on some of the maintenance tasks, work orders, utilizing our new software, some of the annual inspections that we have throughout all of our city facilities, and other odds and ends like that within the Public Works Department.
Yeah, and this positions really came up this past year with the retirement of Keith and just the amount of work that's increased on Marty and his guys and city staff. As you know, we've wanted to implement phase 2 of our HVAC plan for over a year now. I don't have the staff time, the bandwidth to give it to anybody. And it sounds like it's never going to happen if we don't actively pursue someone to operate and help our facilities. As you know, this building is almost paid off. That means 20 years old. It needs a lot of work. We're building a new public works facility. As you know, we want to maintain our facility. And then the rec center also, we're very fortunate to have Brian over at the rec center who literally does everything over there. But this is one of those positions that has probably been needed for the past 5 years. We just haven't had Brian would take care of his stuff. Keith would take care of over here and Marty would take care of over here. But we're starting to see different maintenance stuff build up as well as work orders. Stuff needs repainted, those types of things. So instead of contracting out for that, we would employ this person. Marty has no shortage of tasks for any of his employees. If for some reason that this employee wouldn't be, maybe it only takes part-time, he'd be under Marty to utilize as a laborer or a mower or any of those types of positions. So I think it's a good hybrid position that is very common in Bel Aire. However, it meets the needs for not only Marty's staff, but administration, rec, and the new public works.
I just want to touch on that $96,000 for the wage and benefits. That's roughly a $24 an hour job. The benefits make up the rest of that, depending on if they take our health insurance or not. And there's a whole bunch of other items that they could benefit from that makes that number seem so high. The chemicals that we just went over on that last presentation, we have $120,000 in the budget for that. If we were to need to use that entire $112,000 based on that last slide there. Obviously, if we don't need to use it, great. We can use whatever's left over towards CIP projects or sewer hole manhole rehabs, et cetera. I just like the budget for the worst case scenario if we do need to use all that. Wastewater system maintenance and repair, we still got $80,000 in there. If the pump breaks, if emergency happens, we got to go replace a piece of line, et cetera. Updated the CCUA operations and debt payments. They now reflect what the debt payments will be moving forward since we did the new bond issuance back in March. That increased the debt service amount about $500,000. It will be increased that much for several years until it levels out back to that level debt service we've had for quite a while.
And Barry will show you in the next slide, but I think it's important to note here, we've been planning for this plant expansion, and that means we're not going to see a spike in rates because of that. And that's what we have and already in reserve, that's going to cover that extra until 2033 so that we don't see that spike. So I think it's a good time to stop and say, okay, we kind of planned for this, and this is the fruition of that plan on financially.
The other thing about that is, keep in mind is that all the things, the calculations that Rebecca was going through a little bit ago will directly affect that bond payment, because there'll be a true up at the end of the year that if we don't use half of the system, we get a credit on.
Great point. Then I started working with Marty and John on creating CIP plans, one for sewer and one for water. So we will refine this as we identify more projects, but it's a good start so far. And this is what we have currently. This will eventually go 10 years, and then we'll focus on a rolling 5-year period as we move forward on our next annual budgets. So right now, it's kind of hard to.
Sorry, one more. The other great beauty of, we made a purchase of a sewer cam about a year ago, and Marty and his guys are committed to going down every pipe we have. So that's a huge benefit to the city. Instead of contracting that out, we can have guys go out and sewer all, or camera all our sewers and make sure we are tight, basically.
Yeah. And it'll look, when we get to the water CIP side, this one will eventually look like that one when we get through televising all the lines and start building out that project list. But for right now, we have a SCADA system upgrade, a lift station pump, the 53rd Street to Rock Road, manhole rehab project, or is that Rock Road to Oliver, that area there? Is that right? Okay. Rock 53rd, about 500,000. And then just a reoccurring manhole rehab annual amount for each year, moving out throughout the city, keep those maintained. That's kind of the start of the plan. As we identify more, we'll bring it back and present those projects to you for your approval.
Wouldn't you project revenues to increase each year, though? I don't know what the percentage would be, but based on growth?
It doesn't have
They're all
any of that.
flat, though.
Yeah, it doesn't have any of that in there right now. We're just trying to first identify every project we need to have in the plan. Once we lay those out, then we'll go over the revenue sources to see what we can fund each year moving forward. This is just that first initial start. But for sure, if that chemical treatment process does or doesn't work, then we'll want to look at those manhole rehabs for 26. And within the sewer budget, we have $1 million budgeted right now for any type of CIP projects for 26. So this is that first stepping stone, just getting rolling, and then it'll be set pretty much next year for the rolling 5-year period.
Marty, have you started looking at any SCADA systems?
We're in the process right now.
You want to clap here, Marty?
We're about to have a meeting.
Yeah. Come to the microphone, please.
Yeah, Marty and I have been talking a lot about SCADA systems lately.
Yeah, we're right in the process of doing that right now. Within the next couple of weeks, we'll sit down with Ted and Barry and have a good estimate of what it's going to cost to do that.
So a couple things, and you may be aware of these, so if I'm telling you stuff you already know, great. But we replaced the SCADA system at CCUA, and that was a painful process because the system that they were using was so inversatile that you couldn't replace it with a different one. You had to go with the same manufacturer, and that really locks the CCUA in. And that's, I just don't think that's cool. I don't think that's a good thing to do. If we can keep from doing that, I'd appreciate trying to do that.
And that's kind of what we're doing right now. That's kind of why we're going a different direction, what we've been going for the last 20 years and putting Band-Aids on things, pulling them off and not
Right.
getting by. So this is going to be a painful experience, but I think it's the right thing to do, especially when we move to the new building. Right now, we do not have the capability of reaching over to where, if we were just to stay with what we're doing, we would have to retrieve all the information from where we're at present.
Yeah.
So,
The other thing is that the League of Kansas Municipalities will be having their annual conference in Overland Park this year. They always have several vendors who have SCADA systems there that we can collect data for you if you, or if you're going, then you can collect data there about the different options out there.
Marty, you've reached out to probably 3 or 4 or more than that.
I believe it's actually 4, and I've got one that actually came out and is doing the actual workforce right now, is going through everything, looking through everything. It's not like just opening the door and looking at it, go, this is what you need.
I
You
know.
got to go to every lift
It's-
station. You got
yeah.
to, this competes with this does that.
Right.
So, yeah, it's painful.
Yeah, I knew that about the systems.
Right.
I just didn't know what you knew about those other things. So, okay. All right, good. Thank you.
So here's the fund overview with our budget comparison chart showing the 23 activity to 24, the 25 year to date compared to the 25 budget, and then the 26 proposed amount there in the gray column, on the right side of the gray column. Down below here is our fund balance numbers. I will say on the 2024 total activity column on the chart here, this number here, the total activity there is different from the change in fund balance in this column here, because we just received back our final audit draft. And these are the actual 24 change in fund balance numbers from the report. We just haven't had to make those entries into the system yet. So that's why those two columns are a little off. But for 25, we're still budgeted at a negative $70,000 drop to fund balance. And 26, we're scheduled to drop, or we're proposing to drop that about $1 million to incorporate those new CIP projects. And as Ted mentioned, that's where that fund balance comes into play to help alleviate the increase in that CCUA debt service as well. I know that was pretty fast. Any questions on sewer? Sorry. Okay. Move over to water. For the water fund on the revenue side, we kept the estimates pretty conservative due to kind of the unknown timing on when the draw restrictions will lift, and then that normal water consumption behavior will return for our users. So kept those pretty conservative for 26. On the expenditure side, we maintain the water tower maintenance program, $75,000 a year. We designated a line item for a new water meter replacement program. So these are dedicated to replacing new meters for new subdivisions and replacing old meters that are reaching their end of life. So this will be an annual expense moving forward to make sure we stay up to date with our entire meter reading system. But we'll continue our GIS information.
And I'll stop just real quick. This is just something that Marty or that Barry's really good at, is trying to plan out instead of getting hit with, we have to replace quarter of the city with meters. He's trying to plan out every year we replace a few here and there and there. And then so we don't find that big bubble at the end of the rainbow that some cities find. So that's, I just thank you, Barry, for being vigilant on that.
Yep. If you're curious, we have around 4,000 meters, average life of 10 years, 400 meters a year, about $45,000 a year. So we'll just keep that rolling and keep those refreshed.
The water tower maintenance program, how often do they clean those towers with that? Especially for the mold that you get on the underneath side of the
I'll defer to
south
the
tower.
expert on the topic.
Our current contract, they clean each tower on a revolving annual basis. So they'll
Okay.
do the south tower 1 year, the next year they'll come back into the north tower, and they'll just keep coming back on that revolving annual basis.
Okay. Is there any plan sometime in 5 years, 10 years to repaint any of those towers?
The south tower actually was just repainted, I think last month, if I remember right. They came out, cleaned the towers and repainted them. And that's actually when we discovered the valve issue with the south tower, because we had to drain the tower for them to paint it. If we hadn't drained it, the sweat from the tower would run the paint when they were trying to put it on.
Right. Okay. I understand that. So I know, and maybe we missed the boat here, but Ty Lasher, when he was city manager, we talked about maybe changing the color, at least the underneath side of the color, so that the mold doesn't show up so bad. Did we do that? I didn't notice that the tower had been repainted, but I don't go looking up at the towers every day, so I don't.
It's actually funny that you mentioned that because internally we also discussed it after the south tower got painted. We were looking at it. We're like, that north tower, we can see all that collection of the mildew and mold on the bottom. So we're gonna bring it up to our contractor when they come out to paint the north tower, and I believe that's either next year or the year after. I have to check if they could maybe make it a darker color or a color that's less susceptible to growing mold.
Well, at least it wouldn't reflect it as much. I mean, you probably can't get rid of it, but unless there's a paint that'll do that, that'd be fantastic if there is, but I don't know about
More than happy to look into it.
it. Okay, thank you.
Nostalgia's hot. We can go back to the blue at the South Tower.
Moving forward, we increased the liability insurance line item for water, sewer, streets, and parks to account for the new public works building for their liability insurance in there as well. So that new increase is split between all the public works departments. So when you see $5,000, it's probably not going to cover the whole building. So it's actually 4 different departments put together for that. We're maintaining our Wichita water purchase expense at $750,000, even though we may not spend that much, but
Yeah, again, we're working to renegotiate or bring that water contract under CCUA. I just don't know what's going to happen when and if restrictions come out. So I just wanted to keep that level just to make sure we're knowing exactly what take each city is going to, as we go in there, to a little bit of the unknown.
And brought up to date the CCUA operations and debt payments. They matched the CCUA budget that was passed a few months ago. And then also working with Marty and John on the water CIP plan. And this is eventually what the sewer one will look like. When you look at that whole 10-year period, there's projects every single year lined out, mapped out, ready to go. So at the end of each year, we can go ahead and come to the city council, get approval to start moving forward with these projects, get the engineering done, get these things up and moving in January and February when it's a slow season for a lot of the contractors. So hopefully get much better bids at that time too.
And I think I reported it recently, but the most exciting part of this is after 2036, and we follow this plan, every main line in the city of Bel Aire will be PVC. So not many cities can say that. A lot less maintenance. I mean, you'll still have maintenance, but it's just the future is good when that is your case in your whole city. If you think of big cities or any other type of city that's been built, that's going to be a huge bill come due for a lot of these cities. You're starting to hear about it now.
Yeah, and just kudos to Marty and John and the whole public works team for getting all this data together. They brought to me each of these individual projects with linear feet of piping, valves, hydrants, I don't know the terminology, couplings, whatever they need for the project. Each was complemented with its own map of the proposed project. So we know where every valve, hydrant, water meter, service line is when we go out to RFP for these projects. So we're already 5 steps ahead every year. We're going to start rolling these projects out. So great job.
So as you add new areas, new developments, do you add anything in this list for those? I mean, this is all capital replacements, right? But obviously, as you know, as things get older, they deteriorate. So,
Right.
Once you get through this cycle, you'll have some stuff from 2025 that will probably need some attention.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be things here and there as well, but I mean, what's the useful life of a new PVC water main?
30 years plus.
30, 40. Estimated 100. Oh. So it really stretches that out a lot more than
that's
than
today's
compounding
thinking.
what these are.
That's
So.
today's thinking. Tomorrow that may change.
So hopefully it stays streamlined, and then this flips every 75 years back to the front, that kind of thing. So
Yeah. I would be shocked if that happened. I mean, I won't be here to know, but I'd be shocked if that happened.
Well, the pipe they're replacing is 50 years old, isn't it? So it ought to last that long.
The functional things happen, so that's where you get the issues.
So here's just a fund summary for the water fund. There's the 24 actuals, the 25 budgeted amount, the 26 requested amount. We normally do or budget around 600,000 for these water main replacements, but the projects identified for 26 was 933,000. So that's that 355 difference you're seeing there for 26. Then that'll slowly whittle down that fund balance as we move forward throughout the CIP plan.
Real quick, a lot of this stuff is maintenance related, and we'll start having big discussions on when do we need to upgrade our water tower, our master water and sewer plans? When do we need to upsize or install new water mains? That's coming in the next several months. Working on that right now. With what we're seeing in growth on the east side of our city, that sort of thing. How do we prepare for that? Those are the conversations that are happening in these halls right now. So hopefully we'll have that plan to put our master plan in place relatively soon.
Yeah, it's always great to know what you have, what it's going to cost to maintain and sustain what you have before we start adding on everything on the outskirts of town here. So once we get these steps in place, it'll really create that foundation operationally to where we can start looking at, if we need to borrow money long-term for the big expansions or create some other kind of savings mechanism throughout a rate structure to start saving for those larger projects throughout later on. Solid waste is just basically our trash service. These are basically revenues in, expenses out, revenues in from the utility bills, expenses out to our solid waste handler. And for 26, we are matching revenues with expenses. So, $0 budget there. And this does still add to that transfer to the streets program, that $100,000. Adds on to the general fund transfer to create that $950,000 total for the streets plan.
You're just keeping it at 100,000? We've been doing that for how long?
I implemented that in 2017 or so, 18
it's been
maybe.
a while,
Yeah.
so.
We can look at it.
I mean, just saying is with everything else going up in price, surely there's more cost than road maintenance, right?
Yep. And at the end of each year, we can always revisit this. If we want to increase it, we can.
So any insights into the progress on the sewer plant expansion, and is there expectations if there's any overages or change orders or anything? Is that all going okay? I know they started a little while ago.
Well, I'm not sure it's actually started yet.
Really? I was told they were moving fences and getting ready to start.
Well,
Didn't happen?
last time I was there, it hadn't happened, but I haven't been there in
Really?
a couple weeks, so it may have already started now. I just haven't been there.
But is anything where if we have a change order or anything, I assume it's baked in somewhere? We've got some buffer.
That's
On the expansion,
so
on the CCA.
that's really a CCA question more than
So it wouldn't be apply here?
It wouldn't apply here. But just to answer that quickly, there is a cushion in the CCA budget that will account for that.
Okay, great.
And it's a pretty substantial cushion that if we don't use the money, we'll have to find an appropriate place to use the money because it's bonded out and
Oh,
we can't just pay it back.
That's right.
Okay. So
All right.
there are some legal things you can do and some things you can't do. And we'll bond council guide us on that when we get to that.
Okay.
It's a couple years away.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to stormwater, pretty straightforward as well. Revenues in from utility bills for stormwater charges. That we're budgeting 300,000 for 2026 for any kind of drainage improvements that we identify throughout the city.
And Barry, just to clarify, this is the fund that helped paid for some of the recent culvert replacements, correct?
Correct.
Just so citizens that are watching can kind of understand.
Correct. There's two things. So once we close out that temp note for the culvert replacements, or I guess, you're talking about Rock Road. Rock Road and all of our culvert replacement, bridge replacements we'll pay for cash out of this fund, correct? The fund balance there. The Aurora Park project and the ditch is our portion will also come out of this fund when that comes due.
That's good.
So we'll move on to our other non-taxing funds, which is streets, land bank, bond and interest, equipment reserve, and then the CIP there at the end. So for the streets fund, the main revenue sources here are the state and county fuel taxes that we receive. The estimates for 26 are exactly the same as 25, so no change in those there. We do still have the general fund transfer and the solid waste transfer of 950,000 total, which makes up our annual street maintenance improvement plan. All the expenditures here are just for the construction maintenance of all of our roadways. As a quick overview. So like I mentioned, we're maintaining the transfers for the street maintenance program. Expenditure wise, budgeting 950,000 for that street maintenance plan. 50,000 in paved street repair, 15,000 for general use of gravel street repair. And then there is 21,000 in there for Hillcrest on the gravel street repair.
Yeah, so we focused a lot on Aurora Park and the task force, and we're going to implement that gravel road recommendation after the ditches are done and the project's closed out. There's one area that wasn't included in what we discussed this year, that's Hillcrest. I think we want a budget for at least the re-rocking of Hillcrest. There's also some other discussions on maybe their drainage that we can have, but I at least wanted to put in the 21,000 that was estimated to redo that street, because that would completely redo all our gravel roads inside of Bel Aire.
Yeah. So I think we really need to look at that drainage, because we spent the money doing the studies. So I hate doing the studies and then leave them on the shelf.
And I was looking for that, and I think it might be wise to maybe invite Kenley, who did the drainage study, to come review it one more time
Yes.
with us, because I can't even find the drainage study very well. So
Done the same time Aurora Park was done.
I know,
So it's
I know,
all
but-
part of the same project.
Awesome. We're maintaining the 35,000 for snow and ice removal. I think Ted wanted to talk about the snow and ice.
it's another
response
fun
policy.
topic, and we don't have to broach it today, but I know last winter we had a few kind of unfortunate snow events where it stayed cold long after it snowed. And there was a lot of chatter about, plowing local ice streets. And right now we have our snow plan that does mainly the main arterials and collector streets. So if that is something the council wants to pursue as some sort of change in the way we're doing things, we'll have to match that with a budget expenditure, because it's going to take a lot more sand and manpower. Frankly, it'd be very difficult for Marty and his guys, because right now they run, and I think I did a quick city manager's report on this, is the crews that they run is, three on all 24/7. So to put more trucks in service, that's even more money and more time expense. So, but I also wanted to stop here and note it, just in case anybody wanted to discuss that.
So my view on that is we do not need to make that change just because you had an unusual year this year. The norm is snow and ice doesn't last long around here. Okay. There'll be times it does, and we've all seen that, but that's not the norm.
Are they considering the additional streets we've added? I mean, is there any additional road that needs to be covered in all these new areas now? I mean, because this is the same as what we had, but I know the city has added a lot of street. I just didn't know. I mean, I just hope we at least have, everyone has the opportunity to get to a decent road within a very short distance. I hate to have to see them drive 3/4 of a mile to get to a road that's decent. I mean, I know you can go slow and take your time and not spin around and everything else, but I'm just wondering if we're not being a little bit overly, not that we can hire somebody part-time or bring in a contractor to support additional effort if we don't want to do it. Anyway, just curious. It just seems like if we're doing the same thing over and over and we've added more streets, is there any way to kind of have a better balance?
Let's put it this way. We have snow routes that we go by. So we clean all those snow routes. Those snow routes, even with the new additions being added, you can still get to those roads, which is your snow route. If we were to clean all the subdivisions, first of all the cars parked on the side of the street,
Right.
it's cannot be done. But I'm going to leave it at that. Everybody has a way out to the snow route. So,
Yeah, I'm just curious if there's if everything's reasonably close. I mean, because you can go real slow, but I mean, you can't just do that for 3/4 of a mile. That is really hard. If we don't have that, then that's great.
yeah, no, we don't have that.
Yeah, you're never going to be able to plow the residential streets, but this last year, we should have acted a little faster with that much ice on the streets. Usually, like the mayor says, 2 or 3 days, it's all gone, but it was an inch or two thick on the streets, and that just needed a little more help.
Well, and you also have to know that once it gets to a certain temperature, it doesn't matter how much ice melt you put down.
Right.
It's
It
not going
does
to melt.
not activate until it gets to a certain point.
True.
So we could be out all night and just fighting it, waiting for the sun to come up.
And we can talk all night about this, but
Right.
I know we looked at the brining solution tanks at Derby. You know, with our new public works facility, we're going to have so many new ideas and spaces that we can bring to the council to better treat.
I'm just thinking on the residential roads that after the event, maybe one salt and sand solution would be enough to get things started and not a huge expense. It's an expense, but it would, and that's only in a rare occasion. So yeah, I don't see that we really need to go overboard on adding money into the budget. We just need to be aware that it's a possibility and deal with it a little bit faster.
The only thing I was going to throw in is somebody that lives on 48th where you plowed it to the rec center. You have the downside of people can't get out of their driveway sometime because the snow build up.
Exactly.
Right. I had that happen when I lived on Waco. Got plowed in.
Now, similar to the water and sewer fund, we are working with Public Works and Engineering and PUC to renew that streets program and create that same 5-year rolling plan that goes in line with the water and sewer. So
Yeah,
here's a
hopefully
couple
get
slides.
Little more thought through that, so we do the water lines before we do the street.
Let me get there in just a second. So just a quick slide here. This is the work that was completed from 22 to 25. Here's kind of what's roughly proposed for 26. And this isn't any kind of decision making.
Yeah, this isn't a
Conversation,
finalized
it's
list.
just a-
We just reached out to Pete Luke with PEC to give us a snapshot to at least present. He's going to be here probably September, probably now October, with that rolling 5 years that we can discuss. So that I think it worked really well that we were prepared to go out to bid at the first of the year, or even, as soon as we can to get it done. Yep.
I would say sooner if you can.
I think based on history though, some of these areas like east of Woodlawn, south of 45th that are proposed, we probably should do some sampling because those may need full reconstruction and we should plan for that in advance.
Yep, that's another major conversation we're going to have with our partners on how exactly we want to go about it. We learned a lot of lessons this year.
Yeah, painful ones, but
Very painful.
So as the mayor kind of alluded to, the benefit we gain from having these plans all in line and laid out is now we can lay them all side by side. We know when we're doing this water line, when we're doing these sewer replacements, when we're doing these streets. That way they're not all on top of each other every year. They're in sync with each other, moving straight forward. It just becomes a rotating 5-year plan for all three of these funds, kind of working together. So really what I wanted from these slides was to make sure that that $950,000 a year was enough to get done what we needed to get done. So we're hovering right around that ballpark throughout the rough draft of the remaining plan. So then we get to the summary of the streets fund. There's the 24 actuals, the 2025 amount We will have to amend the budget this year just because we had the additional 24 streets plan happening this year. Just because of the timeline of our budgeting, it overlaps. So we will have to amend this fund later on this year. And for 26, we're budgeted at dropping 169,000 in fund balance, but we're still maintaining 25% of reserves there just in case.
Okay, I missed what you just said. Why we would be forced to amend the budget?
Yeah, the main budget amendment is because we didn't do the street program in 2024. We put it all in 2025. That's the 2 million. That would be the amendment, the majority of the amendment we would have to make.
Okay. Just that we're spending money from 2024 we didn't spend. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
It's a CIP budget, so it worked
Yeah,
that way. But
well, I was shocked, but if we have to dance that hoop, we have to dance that hoop.
yeah,
That's it for streets. Land bank, pretty straightforward, funded by land sales. Basically sits in there until we're ready to utilize it for some purpose.
what land are you gonna sell?
I'm glad they've all been sold because I don't like being in the land business. So yeah, once again for 25, we'll have to amend this budget.
And this is what we use as our match for the new public works facility. Again, not many cities can say they paid cash for their new public works facility. That's going to be a big positive for all our utility funds and anything supported by public works for the next 20 years.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. So after that transfer, we're sitting around 3.6 million remaining for 25. The only thing budgeted for 26 is just some minor commodities. If we do need them, probably won't. Other than that, it's just interest revenue sitting there. So move on to bond and interest. This is our fund that pays all the city debt, well, portions of the city's debt. Comprised of the general fund transfers, utility fund transfers, and special assessments. So at each council meeting, when we read through the AP ordinance and mayor says, well, this portion of the costs are paid by special assessments, that's what eventually is generated from the property owners that we use to pay down the debt. That's what all the expenses are in this fund. It's just debt. So pretty straightforward there, year over year. Then we'll get to our equipment reserve fund. This is a non-budgeted fund, so we don't need to put it in our state budget form and account for it every year. We just report the actual expenses from the year prior every year on the state form. But this is, the revenues for this fund are comprised of just transfers, general fund, water, and sewer. That generates about 400,000 a year. We take that, put it into the fund, and then we plan out our equipment replacement every year. So right now, budgeted for 26, these are the items we have listed in the plan. Include an admin vehicle, the PD vehicle with the upfitting, the drone we talked about during our general fund budget workshop for PD to replace our current one. And Public Works has multiple items in here as well, as a UTV, lift station pump, if I'm correct, mower trailer, a new mower, and a new parks truck with the spreader attachments and plow. And then instead of doing all the computer replacements out of each department's budget each year, I just take all those and combine them into one transaction and run them out of the equipment reserve fund. So that'll be all the replacements for 26. Totaling 443,000, which drops our fund balance 43,000 for 2026. Still sitting around $1 million in there for that fund. Okay, so now we get to the CIP reserve fund. This fund is what's funded through the general fund transfer of that 415,000. Usually every year it's 400,000 in CIP, $15,000 to the sidewalk grant program is what goes into CIP. These expenses are reviewed annually and approved by city council. So whenever we bring up projects, we bring your priorities, a list of projects to choose from, we select some, and then we move forward with those projects in the CIP fund. Current projects we've been working on and finishing out are the ERP upgrade with Tyler Technologies, the Oliver to Woodlawn Engineering. We still have about 290,000 left in that to pay. That'll be done. The comp plan update, we have $5,600 left to pay towards that. Refresh existing parks. We've been allocating $150,000 per year to do that. Those smaller safety surface projects or replacing some of the equipment at the parks, et cetera.
And we'll probably come to, Brian's working on, the rec center, playground is in need of some upgrades. So we're going to looking at upgrading the rec center playground, but, that'll be presented as a standalone item you guys can discuss at when the time comes.
So for fiscal year 25, our projected ending balance is right around 1.3 million for our CIP fund. So when we're looking towards 2026, we take that starting balance and we add in that annual transfer that we have budgeted right now, that 415,000. That'll bump us up to around that $1.7 million mark. These are the projects that have kind of been in the plan for a little while. We've identified them, they're ready to go for 26. Upon council approval would be the rec master plan engineering to try and kick off some of those projects. The City Hall HVAC Phase 2, the City Hall architecture engineering study. I don't know if you want to touch on that, Ted.
And really that, I think we discussed a few months ago, but we really want to utilize our space here at City Hall the best we can. I know we talked about it, heck, when Ty was here. I would just like to have some sort of a concept plan done so that we can, one, make this space as useful as possible and accommodate some of our growth and serve our residents better.
Also in here's the Bel Aire Bike Paths Phase 1 with WAMPO. I believe the 480,000 is the city share of that project.
That would be the complete city share. More than likely, it's scheduled 2020 to let 2027, but we'd like to do the engineering work. We need to get on that relatively quickly. So you'll probably be seeing a request for proposal bidding for the engineering work on that project.
So with these projects here, that totals about 1.1 million, which leaves us about 567,000 left over in the CIP fund. But to keep a note, some of these projects we will have to 10 note or bond for. Some of these more major projects, 45th Oliver to Woodlawn Construction, for example. But other than that, there's still several other projects we have kind of in the pipeline coming down the road, which is, sorry, let me back up. So looking even further to 27, based off of our expected fund balance for 26, at 567, we'll add in another round of transfers, which bumps us back up to around 982,000. That's all we're really gonna have left over to start tackling these next WAMPO projects or any other major park renovations or the rec center or whatever other project comes up that's identified and brought to council. So really what we're trying to do is how do we want to allocate these funds? Like, how do we want to prioritize these projects? What do we want to start looking towards and moving forward to?
Yeah, and that's the real budget discussion. You know, this year we as we get more commercial growth and we see that, that's what we're battling. And hopefully in 2034, as we see the land debt go down, we can layer some of these projects in to take its place. So we kind of see a smoothing off of our debt. It's going to be the real discussion we have, and probably not good to have at 9-10 at night, but it'll be a full workshop in itself, as you know. And Barry has a slide up here. I'll let him get to it. Of what's our strategic plan? What do we want to do, and how do we want to fund it?
So some of the other major projects that we're going to need to consider debt financings for are K254 project. Sorry, that's a typo. Woodlawn, 45th, 53rd, Rock, Oliver, 45th Woodlawn.
And it's a little difficult where we're at right now. It's wonderful that K254 project's getting up and running, and we're going to get a concept plan over the next 8 months, probably to a year. And that's going to dictate a lot of it's looking at a map north of 53rd, what street, the Rock, Webb, Greenwich, what we're going to do with that mile. And then in WAMPO on the south of 53rd, how can we also help with those arterial streets. So that's kind of how we divided it in this slide, is everything south of 53rd and north of 53rd, because there's so many questions based on what KDOT's going to come up with on north of 53rd. So we don't want to, get too far ahead of our skis until we know exactly what's going on with 254.
We don't even have any projected dates for these projects yet, right?
No, they're, how do you say it, Mayor Madange? They're on the list, but they're not in the pipeline, I guess. What's the proper terminology on WAMPO?
Yeah, they're in the MTP, but they're not in the
Not the tip.
TBD. I don't know. I can't remember which.
There's a TAC in there too, isn't it? A TAC.
And then the
The
K2,
tip, the TIP, that's it.
and then the K254 project is technically in the development pipeline
Yeah, and
and
that's
has
not a
not
WAMPO
received
thing.
construction funding. So that's what one of our main things we'll be advocating for at the KDOT local consult. So that's a couple years.
But that's
down the
not a
road.
WAMPO thing. That's a KDOT
Right.
issue, totally KDOT. But WAMPO won't be involved in that.
But just talking timeline of projects, that's probably 2+ years out at the fastest.
But you can see where the previous slide and this slide really lines up with the city's debt structure, and that 2034, we're leaving ourselves with a lot of debt, and that we're going to have to really plan out how we want the future to look, so that we plan this financially outright for the city.
And I will say it again, these projects that we have identified here for 26, we still will bring these to you for approval. These are just kind of slotted in right now just to show what's most recently been talked about regarding potential CIP projects. So really my goals for the whole CIP plan is I'm really glad we got that comp plan done, because that's going to establish some overall goals for the city of Bel Aire, right? So we can take those goals, we can utilize those goals and really start to identify what projects we're really going to need over the next 10-year period. That 254 project, when that comes along, that's going to enhance a lot of other projects, especially from WAMPO, regarding the connectivity and transportations plan throughout the region. Those might bump up higher on the priority list from them, so they're going to bump up on our list at that time frame as well. So as soon as we start identifying those goals and those strategies and really nailing down these projects that we want to move forward on, then we can really get towards those funding sources and how we're going to implement that. What funding are we going to need to be able to construct and move forward with these projects that we want to get done? So that's kind of the overall goal of the CIP, and we're really starting those baby steps towards getting this thing going. But once we're there, just like the water, sewer, the streets, and our overall CIP plan, it'll all be cohesively working together. If that makes sense. I know we had a few discussions about a sales tax as a potential funding source for some of our CIP projects. So I had our financial advisors put together a pro forma based upon what we could afford, based upon our $620,000 a year estimate. So what they sent was, on a 15-year note, we could generate about $6.6 million worth of projects. On a 20-year bond, we could generate about $7.8 million worth of projects that we could then fund using a sales tax. So just something to throw out there, not to have a whole discussion on, but I know that was asked a few times over the past couple workshops. Just something to think about. That's really all I have.
That's pretty much what we have tonight. Open to discussion or whatever, however you guys want to take it. But I just thank Barry for all his work. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
I would tend to agree with the comment that it's been a long night, and I think a CIP discussion is warranted, but maybe September's workshop where it's standalone, or is there anything else that you'd have on the schedule? But that seems like that's at least a couple hours discussion on its own.
Yeah, that may be appropriate. Yeah, I don't think that if everybody feels kind of like I do. I think we're pretty well exhausted with discussion tonight. So I think
Well, we'll say at our August 19th city council meeting, we'll be approving a resolution that sets the public hearings for our revenue neutral rate and the budget on September 2nd. So that night we will do the hearings, approve the budget, and then we'll be done for 2026.
Okay.
And the reason we do that, because if for some reason you want to change it, we'll have a workshop and another meeting to approve the budget. So that it's due September, the end of
Says
September.
September 2nd.
The
I thought you
hearings
got
has
to
to be
approve the budget
done.
on September 2nd.
It'll all happen September 2nd.
Yeah.
Because that's the date we put on our intent form.
So you're not going to have a workshop between now and then.
No. So on the 19th, when we do those, that resolution for the hearing, I'll have the state form summary page all filled out, ready to go to look at. And go from there. That'll kind of be our finalization of the budget.
Okay. Just want to make sure we weren't thinking we're going to have another workshop on the budget.
No, not on the
because
budget.
I don't think
I'm
so.
sorry.
I think we're done. with
We're
that.
done.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate everybody's time tonight, and we'll see everybody next Tuesday for a regular meeting.
Thank you.